we are live. I am John Pollock, and joining me in the hot seat today, filling in for the one and only Wei Ting, he is John Siino, host of Shot in the Dark, and you can hear his voice all across the Post Wrestling and Up Next networks. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, of course, anytime. Thank you for the invite. I'm always pleased to fill the shoes of Mr. Wei Ting.
Yes, we have a lot to talk about today. We will be going through some TV numbers, reports that are out there. We'll chat a little bit about the Royal Rumble and what John has thought of the build-up to Saturday's card. And we will get a live report from John, who attended the World on GCW on Saturday night at the Hammerstein Ballroom. So thank you to everybody for joining us live. If you want to throw in any comments, super chat, you can do so. You can also send us a Snapchat. We won't get it, but you could still send it and add us. But lots to talk about today, and I wanted to start off with the news about Ronda Rousey, John. Reports coming out from Fightful, and then follow-ups from both Dave Meltzer and Mike Johnson at PW Insider. And essentially, it seems that, Ronda Rousey is scheduled for WrestleMania. It makes all the sense in the world that she will be there on Saturday at the Royal Rumble. And, in reaching out, I would be very surprised if she is not there on Saturday. So just looking at kind of the lay of the land here, John, if you are taking Ronda Rousey and bringing her back, and let's not forget, it's been 3 years since fans have seen her. What is the ideal scenario to reintroduce her and set up the biggest program for her for WrestleMania in Texas?
I mean, if she's going to be in the actual Rumble itself, I think it's a foregone conclusion. She kind of has to win it. I can't see them, hyping up Ronda, bringing her back, and then her not win it. Unless she does what she did in Philly, when her debut 2018, where she comes out after the match and just kind of points to the sign. But I feel like if she's going to be in it, and I haven't heard any like Ronda talk going into it. So now it's like the fact that it's so close to the actual event, I'm pretty sure it's a conclusion that she's going to have to win if she's in it, unless she's just going to make an appearance.
Yeah, I think that, if you are putting her in there into the actual match, I don't think it makes any sense in the world not to have her win. You can come out with like different scenarios, like her just being there on Saturday. It doesn't mean you have to put her in the Rumble. But I think you are looking at what is going to be the most buzzworthy aspect. And I think her coming in, winning the Rumble, setting up, your scenario. I would say that when you're looking at the potential list of opponents, like who is there? Is Becky Lynch just the automatic assumption that you would go with, John? Is there other scenarios that you could see going in those directions for April?
Yeah, I mean, the only, I can see a scenario in the Rumble itself with Ronda and possibly Shayna Baszler. So does anybody that can actually, take out Ronda? I think Baszler's probably the only, person I can actually see. We haven't seen her in a while. So it would make kind of,
spot.
Yeah, I can see that spot for sure with those two. But yeah, I was going to say Bianca going into it. But, the more I hear about Ronda, I feel like there's no other person I could really realistically seeing, unless I know Charlotte has teased the idea of winning it and picking her own opponent. So that's another scenario I can see, but I'm gonna have to go with Ronda with this one.
Yeah, it is interesting that so often we have talked about these separate women's divisions and the star power that has been spread out across both shows, and you've been hurt by Sasha Banks is out at the moment, Bayley has been out for a long period of time, and now all of a sudden it's this kind of, it is WrestleMania season, and, everyone expects Bayley will be back in time. Sasha Banks is not going to be out for all that long. You have Bianca Belair in the thick of things. You have Becky. You have Charlotte. You have Ronda Rousey. But there's only so many spots for, major programs going into Mania, as well as the tease of Lita doing more beyond Saturday's matchup and where you go there.
Yeah, I can definitely see. I forgot who brought it up. It might have been Way on the possibility of having a tag match with Lita and Mickey against a Bayley or Sasha. I think that's the more realistic scenario if they're going to use Lita. They did tease
or Lita and Trish. Lita and Trish has been one that's been thrown out there as well as your potential. But then again, you're throwing another name into the mix where, as we've just outlined, that's you've got a lot of star power in this women's division and many different avenues to go. But Ronda being back, that to me takes precedence over everything. That will be the dominant women's program for WrestleMania.
And I know they teased Lita and Charlotte when she was on SmackDown. Can you see that match possibly happening at Saudi for Elimination Chamber, a big attraction?
I could for sure. I think that you do have that February show, and the idea of doing something on TV is not even out of the realm of possibility. I mean, we don't have kind of those extra buffer shows like an Elimination Chamber this year. It's like everything is concentrated to Elimination Chamber, which is only 3 weeks after Rumble. So I would say by Saturday, we'll probably have a decent direction, maybe the Monday coming out of it on Raw next week, of sort of your overall direction for Mania, at least starting to get the programs fleshed out and teased in that direction. But I'm expecting Ronda to be, a big part of this weekend and coming out of it as well. When you look at the lineup for the Royal Rumble, so we've got Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley, Roman Reigns taking on Seth Rollins. We've got the mixed tag with Maurice and The Miz taking on the Grit couple, Edge and Beth Phoenix, and then the women's title match with Becky Lynch and Doudrop for the Raw title, and then both Rumble matches. So 6 matches announced so far. I would imagine that is pretty much your main card right there. What have you, coming out of Raw on Monday night, where would you say things are for Rumble in terms of your interest and how they have built up the key programs?
I've actually been pretty impressed with this Grit couple, It couple thing. I think the segment last night has actually done really well. Like, yeah, you're going to see somebody put through a table and a cake and all that. But I think it was handled really well with like Beth coming out there and just clotheslining those security guards. It actually made me hype for this match to the point where I don't think this is going to be the last we see of it. I don't know how they're going to extend it to a Mania, but I can see it possibly keep going on. I just like, you're already doing the mixed match. Like, what else can you do? Like, you're not going to go back to an Edge and Miz singles match, are you? But I feel like there's definitely more to this feud after the Rumble. But yeah, I mean, even I like the Lashley and Brock segment. I'm loving Brock and his wardrobe choices. And after Braden Harrington put out a whole thread on Twitter about Brock and his hats, I feel like he must have seen that and took out his best cowboy hat for Raw. Those are probably my top 2 matches. Rollins and Roman. Like, I see what they're gonna do on SmackDown, I guess, but that match nothing's really doing it for me. I have maybe like a little prediction on what happened with the Usos being banned from ringside. But other than that, I'm not really too excited for that match.
Yeah, maybe it'll be Edge and Beth calling out the next couple, and we get the legit couple, Ronda Rousey and Travis Browne. John,
I honestly, after GCW, I would love to see Matt Cardona and Chelsea Green go after the Grit couple.
Well, the great thing is many things rhyme with grit, so they could just go through the alphabet and come up with many scenarios for Edge and Beth Phoenix. But,
yeah, you could have Nick Aldis and Mickie James could be the Brit couple.
We could go through all of this. But in terms of the men's Rumble, I'll say like the men's Rumble, it feels like it's very much in the shadows at the moment. And not to say it's not going to be an entertaining match, but that's one where I see it being a little more open-ended and certainly lends itself to some kind of surprise, because there is not that automatic front runner that I think people are looking at. And you have the added caveat of the idea that one of the losers of the championship match could very well end up in the Rumble as well. So what are you looking at towards the men's match and maybe like a short list of candidates?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they haven't announced any like big surprises makes me think that there are gonna like have some prizes. I think that maybe somebody must have been watching the GCW show and maybe called out Sean Waltman and say, hey, you want to do an X-Pac appearance? I could definitely see that happening. Jeff Jarrett, I could see definitely popping in it. As far as who's going to win it, it's really hard, honestly. There's not a lot of choices. I can see possibly like Brock, like I know they made the MVP was on the Corey Graves podcast and he was mentioning how his prediction is Brock is going to lose it and somehow make his way into the Rumble itself and winning it. And that's the only way he can get his title back. So I can definitely see that happening. Brock's definitely inserted himself in Money in the Bank matches and all these other type of matches. So maybe he just pops in and wins the Rumble. I might have to go with Brock, honestly, because there's no other real big contender for me this year.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of does, like you look at that main roster at the moment, and if you're picking somebody off the roster, like they did a very good job a couple years ago with Drew McIntyre in terms of like that win truly did catapult him to another level. And of the available talent, like the only one I could really see benefiting at that, and I would call this like a very outside shot, would be like a Damian Priest level, but it really feels like that would be almost too much of a jump for him at this moment. Big E, I guess, is like in that mix as well, but I mean, not one that really jumps off the page at you when you're looking at this beyond a surprise or somebody from one of the title matches coming in. But at the same time, like there's good and bad with that. Like you don't have your big stars, at least going into it. But at the same time, there is the surprise factor. And I think people are very much like that is a big appeal of this type of match and this type of event.
Yeah, I mean, the last time they did like kind of like an underdog winning, I think it was Nakamura, right? In 2018. He wasn't, I don't think he was predicted by anybody to win that Rumble. So you might be right. They might throw the rocket on the Damian Priest for this one.
I predict Nakamura will not win this year. That's my prediction. Okay, I'm gonna put that one out there.
Okay.
Report coming out from Mike Johnson at PW Insider is that Brian Kendrick, who has been serving as a coach at the WWE Performance Center, has also requested his release. This coming off the heels of Mustafa Ali, who had publicly requested his release. Now, Brian Kendrick had not publicly requested this release, but he is hopeful of receiving one, according to this report. And this would, continue what we saw recently with Scott Garland, Scotty Too Hotty, another coach who had requested his release. And I mean, you don't try to read too much into things, John, but I mean, Scott Garland outlined his exact reasoning for leaving. Like the vibe changed there in a big way. And Brian Kendrick requesting his release would kind of support that in terms of like, this has been a significant regime change, not just on screen, but certainly behind the scenes as well. Unless there's another reason for Brian Kendrick wanting to leave, but we have not seen him since TV when Harland destroyed this guy and we never got that match.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. If I show up to work and somebody threw me down a flight of stairs, I'd probably want to release also. But no, in all seriousness, like hearing like what Scott Garland said about like imagine like training these guys to be like the next big star, then they just get released. Like that's devastating to like see like your students, like your kids in a way that you've been working with for so hard and just like nothing, they're gone. So I can see Kendrick having the same feelings as Scotty did and just be like, hey, what's the point of me being here if like I'm doing my job and it's unsatisfying to see like nothing coming out of it. And then that thing happened with him. He was supposed to actually fight Harlan like the next week and they played his music and then I'm not sure what happened with him being off the show, but we haven't seen him since.
That was the week when like several people were like off the shows, probably for a variety of reasons, but not something they ever circled back to either. They just kind of moved on from that and never mentioned it again on TV.
And I don't know like what the situation with these coaches are. If like they don't want to wrestle or they're told, hey, we don't have a spot for you. There's just a training role. Maybe Kendrick still wants to wrestle. I'm sure he can still go. So maybe that's another decision. Maybe he wants to go out there and reform a team with Paul London and do a GCW show or something. Who knows? But I feel like it's the same reasoning as Scott Garland is, where he just kind of wants to leave, as well as like just being defeated by the whole purpose of your students all being released.
Are you sensing any kind of a shakeup in terms of just looking at certain talents, your level, guys that have recently gotten looks at main event of, like kind of, reaching, a decision? Like, is this person either going to be on the main roster or not? Can you see some of those names, your LA Knights, Tommaso Ciampa's, Roderick Strong's, Raquel Gonzalez, I think is going to be in that mix pretty soon as well, even though they are teasing kind of that team with Cora Jade for the Dusty Classic. But any of those names, do you see, making that decision one way or the other?
Yeah, they've been doing this thing recently, like where they take two superstars. First, it was Ciampa and Pete Dunne, where they kind of like have them do dark matches on SmackDown. Then they have a main event for a couple weeks on, before Raw. They're doing the same thing this week. It feels like with LA Knight and Roderick Strong. I could see like any of those four guys showing up in the men's Rumble, honestly, especially if they, after watching them have a couple matches, they see something in them. Like LA Knight, for example, he filmed a backstage segment last night with the Dirty Dogs. So either the Dirty Dogs might pop up at NXT tonight, or LA Knight can definitely be in the Rumble and do a spot with them. But I feel like, at this point, they're just trying to like move the people who have been in NXT or just don't fit the whole 2.0 mold anymore and just test them out on the main roster and see if they fit. And I feel like some people that they aren't going to see that fit, like maybe like a Roderick Strong, they might eventually like release them. It's sad to say, but I feel like there's no other alternative for them now.
It's also such a unique show on Saturday like John, you have seen firsthand, like all of these wrestling shows, like everyone gets affected by, last minute medical protocols. People are not available. You're booking a show where you have two matches full of 60 people. And it's like, you have to prepare to go into this weekend that, someone or some people, plural, may not be available. So it's a pretty difficult show to plan given like the current circumstances of the world.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they probably told all the producers and all the commentators to make sure you bring your gear.
Bring your gear. Everyone bring your gear.
Never know what's going to happen.
All right, let's move on to some numbers coming out of the weekend. So Friday Night SmackDown did very well. 2,255,000 viewers, up 4% from the week prior. The 18 to 49 number up 14% this week, doing a 0.64 rating. That's their best 18 to 49 number since the Madison Square Garden show back in September. So very strong showing for SmackDown. And I look at this as kind of Royal Rumble hype, John, and I think as well, like having Seth Rollins come over, it has benefited SmackDown having some of these Raw talents. We didn't know Big E was going to be on the show, but they did advertise Rollins. It just seems that overall, like there is momentum, especially behind SmackDown, not just from selling tickets, but since day one, they have been doing, strong numbers. Not since the inception of the show, but day one, the pay-per-view.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, there hasn't really been that many big movies I usually, like, I'm a moviegoer, so on Fridays, I usually don't watch SmackDown or Rampage live. I'll go see a movie. And, Scream and Spider-Man's been out for a couple weeks now. There's literally nothing else in the theaters for the next couple of weeks or so. So that could be a reasoning for, I personally stayed home on Friday and I watched SmackDown. Plus, Rampage being live kind of affected me to want to watch Rampage live, not knowing any results. And I'm like, I'm home anyway. Let me just throw on SmackDown. So a lot of people could feel the same way, where they might just be regular wrestling viewers and just kind of throw on both shows. And because of that, the little bump there in the ratings.
Rampage, following SmackDown on TNT, averaging 594,000 viewers, up 13% this week, and a jump of 24% in their 18 to 49 demo. A big jump in 18 to 34. They were up 60% from the week prior, so that was very strong. And male viewership up big with a 27% jump in men 18 to 49, as was males 35 to 49 as well. Actually, they were exactly equal, so I take that one back. But nonetheless, males 18 to 49, a big jump there. And I think a lot of this, Brandon Thurston has the quarter-hour breakdowns, and yes, the first quarter usually does inherit a bit of an audience, but it seemed like Jon Moxley was front and center, the focus of this show with his first match back since October.
Yeah, for sure. The Moxley thing definitely helped. I mean, everybody jokes around about Hook, but hey, having Hook doesn't hurt at all, as well as being his first live match, like on TV. But yeah, definitely the Moxley factor is going to help. Do you know if we're going to get GCW pay-per-view numbers? Like, that should be coming out pretty soon, right?
It's hard to say. Dave Meltzer has a pretty good handle on the traditional pay-per-view numbers, but I mean, you have to look at the scope of a GCW. If GCW does 10,000 buys, that's pretty great for a GCW. But in the relative overall picture, it's kind of harder to nail down numbers when you're talking about more of kind of a finite number like that. Fight, just notoriously, they do not release numbers as much as I have tried. But I think it would be interesting, if GCW does a great number. I always, I understand when companies don't want to release information that might not be impressive. But when it is impressive, man, if I was running a company, I'd be putting out a press release. Hey, if people, it's out there for people to understand the context. If you did 12,000 buys, yeah, on the surface, if you're comparing this to an AEW number, yeah, that's not something. But for a company with no TV, that would be, something. This is a growing audience. So if I was GCW, I would want that out there if it's a strong number. Yeah, for sure. Tonight, NXT 2.0. We've actually got quite the lineup here. So the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic will continue with MSK taking on Jacket Time. Andre Chase and Bodie Hayward will take on the Grizzled Young Veterans. And then we have a North American #1 contendership match between Cameron Grimes and Tony D'Angelo. 6-woman tag, Persha Parada, Kaylee Ray, and Indy Hartwell against Toxic Attraction. And in a no disqualification, Falls Count Anywhere match, Boa will take on Solo Sikoa, where I don't think there will be any self-mutilation, but maybe we will get fire. Maybe someone's sight will be compromised. We will find out. But yeah, 5 matches announced for NXT 2.0 tonight. You're
missing the most important part. We're getting a live performance from Ali J.
That's right. We've got
who
that
I have
as well.
No idea who that is, honestly. I had to look up some of her songs, and I'm not a fan of her music. I'll say I'm but she's definitely not poppy. I can see her, bringing a different type of crowd. As far as the matches go, I'm actually this kind of goes into my Rumble predictions, but I can see a Solo Sikoa possibly being written off, and the fact that the Usos are banned from ringside. Why not bring in their brother, Solo Sikoa? I feel like he's ready. He can definitely be on the main roster, and why not bring him in as part of the bloodline? I think he would fit in. Hopefully he doesn't get any more mutilated by Boa tonight. But I can definitely see him pop up on Saturday. As far as the other matches, I'm interested in seeing a little bit more of Bodie Hayward. I've been seeing him on 205 Live. He's okay. Whenever I see him, I think of a blonde Bo Dallas. Even the way he talks, just reminds me of Bo so much. It's not even funny. But the show tonight seems pretty big. I feel like with that Dirty Dogs tease, we might see something with them tonight as well. But it should be a pretty okay card. You know, I watch NXT just because I'm used to it at this point, but I haven't been too impressed with it. It's been kind of hit or miss a couple weeks. I know they showed a Gunther commercial during Raw last night, so maybe he might pop up as well, and we'll see if there's hopefully no more changes with him. I don't want to see a remix of his theme song or anything, but that could be something else that happens tonight.
Yeah, for sure. What do you look at in terms of the prospects for like the Stand and Deliver show? Are you're running on a week where I do feel like they will be able to sell tickets to this. I don't expect this to be some like gigantic event, but they're running it the right time. If you're going to go on the road, you piggyback off the biggest week of the year for WWE.
Yeah, I mean, his name change aside, I feel like you'd have to put a Walter or Gunther in the main event. So I could definitely see him versus Braun Breaker. That alone is going to bring in the WrestleMania crowd, just having him on the show. I feel like we might get like a mixture of some of the main roster guys coming in, maybe like a Dolph Ziggler or whoever just to come in. Finn Balor might come in for like a one-time appearance. But I think to bring in that like WrestleMania crowd, it can't just be 2.0 guys. It has to be like a mixture of main roster. Maybe some NXT UK guys, bring in a Dragunov, bring in a Michael Satomura. You could have her versus Sasha Banks. I know that's been, rumored for months, but that would be a huge match if you have that on an NXT, stand. I want to call it takeover, but it's not a takeover show. But I could definitely see some like dream match scenarios. Overtaken. Yeah, that's good. I could definitely see some like dream match scenarios that they don't have room for on WrestleMania, just kind of throwing it on here. We don't know the day of the week it's going to be on, right? It's not going to be like your usual Tuesday. We don't really know that yet.
They haven't released the date yet. So I would imagine like you don't want to make it too early in the week if you're trying to attract that traveling crowd. So I would imagine, you do your Tuesday episode and that sets up Stand and Deliver for later in the week where when your audience is in Dallas itself. So we will await the confirmation of the exact dates and locations for both the Hall of Fame and Stand and Deliver. Another thing to put on your radar, I heard from someone today that tonight's squash match between Lance Archer and Joe Keys on Dark is supposed to be something. Like it's apparently quite the squash match. I don't know what that means, but I was told to go out of my way to check out Lance Archer and Joe Keys tonight on Dark.
I guess Joe Keys' ROH dojo isn't going to help him.
I guess not. But we are going to now transition back to Sunday night, where you attended the World on GCW at the Hammerstein Ballroom. So I just wanted to get some of your live takes watching the show and then the feedback you have seen to the show. Have you watched any of the broadcast or just the live viewing?
I went back and I watched the trios match because that match was just fantastic. I kind of saw like the main spots in the Cardona Joey Janela match just to see like, how big the reactions were for certain things. But I didn't watch back the whole show. It was my first GCW show. I didn't expect it to be like your traditional GCW show. It kind of felt more of like a spring break or kind of like a super indie show type of feel to it. Even the crowd that was there, it didn't seem like your usual GCW fans. Even had some like hardcore GCW fans kind of like throw some resistance saying, you guys don't know what you guys are new to this. You guys don't know what you're to expect. So the crowd was a little like 50-50 as far as like the people that are just here to watch a wrestling show and people that are here to, for GCW.
What obviously like the big reaction of the night would have been Nick Gage, but what would you put as like the other major acts in terms of the live reaction?
Thunder Rosa got a huge reaction. I think that whole like battle royal was like, you couldn't even watch the match. The whole time my eyes are like, I was right by the stage. So the whole time I'm just seeing who comes out next. Cause like it didn't show on the Tron or whatever who it was going to be, or you couldn't really hear the music too well. So I think everybody's eyes are just fixated on seeing who's next. So by the time Thunder Rosa came out, the whole place like exploded. Sean Waltman, X-Pac got a really big reaction. The whole Cardona heat was just great. Him just walking around with the Sandman music. Everybody's looking around, expecting like him to come out from the balcony. So that was good. But obviously Nick Gage was like the talk of the town because all throughout the night there was a lot of rumbling saying, is he even going to be here? There was rumors of him saying that he wasn't going to be there. Then just by the time he actually came out, I think you had reported yesterday that like people were literally crying. Like I saw like tears coming down because people were like from the hardcore GCW fans, obviously, because I see them at all the shows, like the real recognizable faces, and they're just crying and they're just like so emotional about this. It's sad that the show had to end like at 11 on the dot. But I feel like that kind of made up for the match itself. Nobody really cared about the match at that point. They just wanted to see Nick Gage come out. But like overall, like throughout the night, I feel like there was a lot of like disappointment in a lot of the GCW originals, like Allie Katch losing and Effie losing, Janela. Like it just felt like there was a lot of like, I don't know, like a lot of balloons being like deflated. I felt like, and like after Allie Katch lost, the whole crowd kind of like was down for the rest of the night. I felt like.
Yeah, I think it was like you can go individually and I think make your cases. I think it was just the fact that they all happened in succession. And I'd even extend it to like John Moxley and Homicide, where, correct me if I'm wrong, it felt like in the building, Homicide was the sentimental favorite. And I don't think anyone was expecting Homicide to win, but it was just you're following like your real GCW genuine star is losing, even if it's setting up stuff for the future. I think for all of it, it kind of just, you were left with that feeling that I guess they were hoping to offset with like the big Nick Gage moment at the end of the night and giving, him and Tremont the victory and the titles.
Yeah, it kind of felt like a one-off show. I didn't really feel like it was part of like the GCW like main storylines. Like I don't know how much is going to come out of this, but I feel like it was kind of like on its own, like in its own little island, just to like satisfy like the crowd. But it was just great to be in the Hammerstein. Last time I was there, I think was New Japan in 2019. That was a show where we had to wait 2 hours for the show to start because the venue needed an ambulance to appear, and that was just like the longest wait I've ever had for a show to start. But it's just great to be in the building. No matter where you sit there, whether it be balcony or the floor, I think it's just a great venue to just watch wrestling. And hopefully, more promotions can use this. I would love to see an AEW and a Hammerstein, or even like a, I don't know, MLW, Impact, anybody just kind of utilize this, because I feel like it's one of the most greatest places to watch wrestling overall.
What was the sense you got when the show was over? Like they had the big locker room emptying, like it seemed like a real cool moment having everybody in the ring. On your way out, just leaving the venue, did it seem like people were satisfied with the show? What was kind of the attitude you suspected from people?
Yeah, I mean, once the show ended, the wrestler just kind of stood there and we're taking pictures. That's how I took a picture with Nick Gage. I literally was bumped into him as I'm leaving out there, and the wrestler just kind of hanging out. Ruckus is outside, and you have Thunder Rosa was there doing autographs. So they're just all kind of hanging out, whether it be outside or downstairs with the meet and greet. But it was kind of like it felt like kind of like an ECW one night stand in a way. Like, even though it's not a reunion, it felt like some sort of like get together for the fans. So it was a nice overall experience. I probably wouldn't go out of my way to go to a GCW show, like out of my city. But if they come back to me, I'll definitely probably watch them again.
Yeah, I know there's plenty of criticism for the show. Like we went through, I think, the good and the bad on Monday. I do think overall, though, like they grabbed a lot of attention from people this weekend, and I do think it's going to be a net positive for the company. And I don't know if that's going to be evident in some of the shows they have coming up. Like they have weekends scheduled over the next month. Like they're going all over the place. I think spring break is the real litmus test of how they draw, not just live. I think they'll do very well live in Texas, but how they draw if they try to go on pay-per-view again, because that would be the show you would want to put on pay-per-view again.
Absolutely. Like a lot of people are talking about it, but I feel like a lot of negativity. I know people that watched the show for the first time that I doubt are going to watch it again. And it sucks because this is not like your usual GCW show, but at the same time, that can be beneficial. Some people maybe didn't want to watch it because they hear like blood and death matches, and maybe they were like, okay, it's not all about that. So yeah, it didn't feel like your traditional GCW show, but I feel like they're going to, the thing with New York, it's tricky though, because you have the 11 o'clock was only because of the pay-per-view. I don't think it was a state thing, right?
Yeah, so I mean, David Bixenspan was writing about this a bit. Like there is a curfew in New York of 11 p.m., although there have been instances where they've gotten extensions. So it does seem like it was something where even if they weren't on pay-per-view, there is kind of a time that you've got to be done by. But the pay-per-view, I mean, they were certainly, harnessed by that on top of it. And I'll add another story that everyone was looking at, like the Nick Wayne story, and Nick Wayne was promoted for the scramble match on the pre-show and then had to be removed and was replaced by Shane Mercer. And of course the word going around was, he's 16 years old and that would prohibit him from being on a New York show. So I did reach out to the New York Commission just to verify this. Like, this is a 16-year-old wrestler. Does this in fact prohibit him from being on a wrestling show? And they responded stating, if you are under 18, you cannot participate in a combative sport event within the state of New York, and sent me a link to the language as well that I included in my story on the site. Now, later in the day, it was conveyed to me that in 2018, there were changes made and that pro wrestling was no longer considered a combative sport within the state of New York. So I've since followed up with the commission about this and trying to get this straight about whether this age restriction is still valid or not in New York. And I'm still awaiting to hear a response there. But I think that sheds just a bit of light of running in New York. It gives you a lot of advantages, a lot of, prestige that comes with it. It also comes with a lot of extra hurdles, which we brought up when we spoke with Brett Lauderdale last week that come with this. And I think this is just like a small glimpse into it. And, as well, and restrictions you're going to have about the types of matches you can put on. Like GCW never promoted a death match for this show. So I don't think that's like a fair complaint about the show, but you're not allowed to blade. It's like there's certain restrictions, and that's what comes with New York. It's you weigh the positive with the negative and hope that, we'll compromise this with the hope of having the benefit of that.
Yeah, hopefully they can kind of fix and resolve some things before they have another show in New York City. I would love to see like a traditional GCW show live, so we'll see.
Well, John, you are going to be back. Actually, tonight you will be on with Braden Harrington on Up Next, so you can check that out live at 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time at twitch.tv/upnextpodcast, chatting about a live performance, jacket time, whatever else happens on NXT tonight, and tell everyone where they can go listen to you for the best 15-minute recap in the industry.
Yep, Shot in the Dark every Wednesday, 15 minutes free on the Up Next feed. Just look it up or subscribe if you're not already. Yeah, like I said, Up Next tonight with Braden Harrington dissecting Ali J's performance. And a quick plug to the Up Next guys. This Sunday for the Up Next Rumble, 4 o'clock, twitch.tv/UpNextPodcast. Unfortunately, I will not be in the Up Next Rumble. Work comes in the way. But good luck to whoever wins and has to face the wrath of Fire Frank at Up Next Mania 2.
Boy, look out for that, everyone. Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. John, I want to thank you very much for filling in today. Wei Ting will be back tonight on Rewind Away with Nate Milton and Chris Ely as they will be reviewing the latest WCW CD compilation of Christmas Brawls from 1996, a release in Germany. I don't know what to expect, but what I can anticipate is a great podcast from those three who did a fantastic review reviewing WCW Slam Jam from last year. So this is the big follow-up tonight. And then Wei and I are back on Wednesday, live at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks to everybody for joining us in the chat.